The Crypt interviews in association with Mayo Leisure Point Castle Bar.
You're listening to The Crypt, and this week's special guest on the show is Robert Rusler. Robert's movie credits include Weird Science, A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Stephen King, Sometimes They Come Back, and Vamp, to name but a few. So you're very welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Well, Robert, in your teens, you were very much the athlete into surfing, skateboarding, martial arts. So what was it that first gave you the acting bug?
Well, first of all, I was always a big movie fan, and I used to watch movies with my grandfather growing up. All the old classic films, the old MGM movies. I had a lot of really wonderful favorite actors back then. I was a big Cary Grant fan, and I just love the old Universal horror movies. My favorite of all time was The Wolfman. And I used to go with my grandfather on Saturdays to the matinee downtown LA when it was about, I don't know, $2 to see 4 films.
My God. And what a difference.
and back in the day as well, there was a lot of movie classics on network television here in the States. Mm-hmm. And so I just grew up watching movies and really, really fantasized about being in the movies as a child. And then got my chance when I was in high school and met my manager, Dolores Robinson, who started me in the business. She got me into acting class, and I studied at the Loft Studio in Hollywood with Peggy Fury and Bill Traylor. Met a lot of great actors there, including Johnny Depp and Sean Penn, Sherilyn Fenn, Jason Gedrick. A lot of great actors came through that school. And that's how I got the bug.
Well, then you were very lucky. You got your first role in a hugely successful movie, Weird Science. How did that part come about for you?
Yeah, the funny story is, John Hughes was, at the time, the hot young actor's director, and he hadn't become iconic yet, or even followed as a cult classic director quite yet, but he was hot then. And the funny thing is that I actually had an audition for The Breakfast Club, and I went into his office to read for the what turned out to be the Judd Nelson role and the Rebel. And as soon as I walked into John Hughes's office, I believe that was at Paramount at the time, he was on the phone. He looked up at me for about 2 seconds, held the receiver, and said, I'm sorry, I'm not going to need to read you today. I apologize. Thank you for coming in, but an audition's not necessary. And I thought to myself, wow, that was kind of abrupt, and I didn't even get a chance to show him what I got,
Yeah.
But I come to find out that he had already cast the role and was actually just being kind and not putting me through the ranks when he knew that he was already going to cast Judd Nelson. So about, I would say, maybe about 6 to 8 months later, just going to class and scene study and studying the craft and really working hard at honing in on my skills, I got an audition for the movie Weird Science. I didn't put together yet that John Hughes was the director, but I had read the script, and I told my mom at the time, because I was still 18 and I was just about to leave the house, wondering what I was going to do next. And I told my mom, I said, wow, this script, if I don't get this movie, Mom, I swear to God, I'm going to join the Marine Corps, because I started getting frustrated. I didn't understand really what paying dues was. I thought, man, I've been doing this for a year, and I've gotten a couple commercials. Maybe this isn't for me. And long story short, when I walked into John Hughes's office, I read with another actor by the name of Craig Sheffer. And Craig and I walked into his office. We must have been, I don't know, we put a scene up for not more than 30 seconds, and he stopped us. He said, stop. And I thought, uh-oh, this guy again, Yeah. And he said, you're both hired.
It was so quick, the opposite way this time for you.
Exactly, completely opposite.
Yeah.
I of course I was a little stunned. I said, excuse me? He said, you're both hired. You're Max, you're Ian. That's all I need to see. welcome aboard. And it was amazing. But there is a finish to this, if I may.
Yeah.
About 2 weeks later, I was surfing out in front of my house at the beach in Playa del Rey, and my brother whistled me into shore. And he said, "Hey, man, Universal Studios has been calling you for like 2 hours. There's some emergency. You have to get to the studio right away." And in a panic, I drove all the way from the beach to the valley where Universal Studios is located, not knowing whether I was going to be fired. Of course, it's my first movie. There's an emergency. Like, what could possibly be going on? And I got to John's office, and there in the waiting room was Robert Downey Jr., and he was fresh off the plane from New York City, hair piled high, sharp Rod Serling 60s style suit. I'm there in my board shorts and sand on my feet. And the casting director said to me, "Robert, there's been a little bit of a change. Craig Sheffer fell out because he's going to move on to do That Was Then, This Is Now with Emilio Estevez, which was an S.E. Hinton film and a Francis Ford Coppola production. Mm-hmm. So we want you to read with this actor that we brought in from New York. His name is Robert also. Take a few minutes, read with him, and then come in and audition." So I met with Robert. We clicked right away. Right away, I knew that I had much to learn from this actor because he was sharp and funny and charismatic and had spontaneity, and he was a much different choice than Craig. We went into John's office to read, and the same thing happened. He stopped us within about 20, 30 seconds of the audition, because he was laughing, by the way, and said, "You're hired. You're the new Ian. Thanks for coming in." And that's how we were cast.
And then being your first film, when it came to shooting that first scene, were you nervous with so many people watching?
Absolutely. The funny thing is that I felt really confident because I had been in class for a year straight, and putting up scenes at the Loft Studio will help dissipate nerves, you know? Yeah. Helps to alleviate thinking of self, and you think more like the character. But funny enough, the very first scene I ever shot as an actor in a movie was the mall scene when I pour Slurpee on their head. That was my very first scene in the movie, very first scene in life. And to this day, I've not seen a bigger camera lens. Literally, this crane moved up to my face within about, I don't know, a foot or two of my face. And the diameter of the lens had to be 3 feet. I don't know exactly what that is metrically, but it's a big lens. Okay. And just so happened that day that they had about 2,000 spectators at the mall watching the scene. So talk about pressure.
Oh, God, it would be. And then you did some improvisation as well in that scene, didn't you?
Absolutely. I looked to Robert. We had become fast friends over the 2 weeks of rehearsal after we had met on the audition. And I looked over to Robert, sort of frozen. I said, "Bob, dude, Downey." He said, yes. I said, "What do I do?" And he kind of read the moment. He just looked in my eyes, and he just went into this complete uninhibited spastic attack and just acted a fool for a good 10 seconds. Just something that you would never do in front of anybody, let alone in front of the mirror. It was just such an embarrassing spastic just reaction. And then he stopped and looked at me, and he just looked at me and said, "Be yourself." And I got it. Like, it was better than any direction, any kind of, acting advice. Like, he just showed me through example, let everything go, be uninhibited, and stay in the moment. And that's where the improvisations came from for the rest of the film.
Fantastic. And I believe then you've a great story about Anthony Michael Hall when you were shooting the scene of the rocket coming up through the floor.
Oh, wow. Yeah, how did you hear about that? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we had this scene, and it was a one take, according to John and our producer, Joel Silver. And it was a big deal. This rocket was actually, this model of the rocket was actually built underneath the stage and was going to hydraulically lift and pierce the floorboards through the whole house. I mean, they had literally 12 cameras set up throughout the house. Mm-hmm. And of course, the A camera was on us. And so we rehearsed, and it was explained over and over that this was a one-take shot, and our positions were very important, and performance needed to be right on the one take because it was going to be about $150,000
oh my God.
to shoot this one particular shot. So everything was organized, everything was rehearsed, through the numbers, by the numbers. And we got finally to roll camera, sound speed, everybody places ready, all the cameras speeding, sounds going, everybody's ready. And John yells action, and the rocket starts piercing the floorboard just as planned, but this horrible stench permeates the room. And Anthony Michael Hall had silent but deadly farted just prior to action.
Oh my God.
It was the kind of stifling man gas
a hanger-on
that you could not help but to gag and run for cover. So needless to say, after the shot was over, John Hughes was so mad, like one of the very few times I've ever seen him angry. Because he had such a very soft-spoken and very light disposition all the time, and he and Joel Silver was having a conniption, and they came to us and they said, "What happened? Why did you leave your mark? What in the hell?" And all I could do was resort to the truth and just look and point at Michael and go, "He farted."
That's so funny.
So we couldn't shoot it again. So what they actually wound up doing was they show the rocket backwards, and they use different angles. If you really look at that scene, there's a couple of cuts where you can tell that they had to play the tape backwards so that I'm approaching the rocket instead of walking away from it in the way that I did. It's kind of hard to explain because I wasn't in control of what my body was doing at the time of the incident. All I was doing was working off of instinct to survive because, I don't know, I guess Michael had some bad Mexican food or something.
Oh, that's a classic. That is a classic story. And then you're still really good friends with Robert Downey Jr. Having 3 sons, do they get excited at the fact that Dad's great friends with Iron Man?
Oh, absolutely. They call him Uncle Bob, aka Uncle Creepy at times.
Uncle Creepy.
But we've stayed friends through the years. I think it's been 32 years now. And we've been friends ever since, and we know everything about each other, and we've celebrated with each other's successes, and we've also been there for each other when times weren't so easy. Honestly, really honestly, he's probably one of the smartest persons I've ever met. He's very gifted, very cultured, very artistic, poetic. He plays, instruments. He's musically inclined. He sings. He plays piano. He's well-read. He's got an amazing sense of humor and an uncanny sense of timing. And he's just really very sharp and gifted in many ways. And that's why I knew right away there was no competition. There's only, when in Rome, you don't do as the Romans do. You stick to your own guns. I believe that. And I think I learned that from Robert. And many times in our career, I utilized him as a friend and as a mentor, and we still have that relationship where I let him be him and he lets me be me, and I really value our friendship very much. He's a great guy, and when he was going through some down times, there was a lot of people that had opinions.
Yeah.
About what he was doing and where he was at, and I never really needed to defend And of course, I never got on the gossip train because I don't do that to friends. But what I would always say is, listen, brother, you have no idea what it is to walk a mile in his shoes. So let the first non-sinner cast the first stone. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Nothing more ridiculous than you judging him and him judging you. So let's just leave it alone.
And I think it's even worse nowadays with social media. Everyone has their, 2 cents to put in about everybody.
Absolutely, but I don't see much negative gossip about him now. It's like that's the way Hollywood is. It's like they revel when you're up and they kick you when you're down, and that's just, I guess, the nature of the beast.
I know, and it's horrible at the same time, though.
Absolutely.
Now, I'm sure you've been asked this question loads of times, but what was it like working with Grace Jones in Vamp?
Well, I'm still recovering from post-traumatic stress disorder. Honestly, too, Grace is another one of those people that it's just an amazing individual. She also is well-read and poetic and is cultured in history and science and art. I mean, she's really, really intelligent. And, she speaks like 8 languages, and she's traveled the world, and she's an actress and a rock star and an artist, and she's introduced me to so many amazing people when we've been hanging out in New York. And, she would take me to Andy Warhol parties when I was 19, 20 years old. And, it was just, I just really have a lot of respect for Grace, and we have a great friendship. We've kind of not been in touch, but she's one of those people that when you see each other, it's like no time is lost, because we just have a bond that I think will last for the rest of our lives. She's a wild individual, and I've never met anybody that has the ability to rage and party like she does and just completely manage her life and her career and her family. She's definitely thinks outside the box, and I love that about her.
And you've said in the past that even though you've played heartthrobs in movies, you're nothing like that you're a total geek. So what kind of things are you into?
Did I say I was a geek? There's probably some truth to that. I've done a lot of things in my 50 years on the planet, and I feel really fortunate. I love to travel. I love sports. I still surf. I still skateboard. I love being with my kids now a lot. And so maybe the parts of me that are sort of geekish, they fit well with my relationship with my children. I'm a father first. I don't try to be their friend first. But we do have a great relationship where, we can be silly and we can just sort of be embarrassing to each other. And there's a lot of geek traits with me when it comes to certain sort of collections and things that I like to do. I don't know if I want to state them all on public radio, but yeah, I'm a little nerdy when it comes to, cartoons and memorabilia and comics and stuff like that. And I don't play many video games, but I love watching my boys play video games because they just crush me in everything I try to play them in anyway. But they make fun of me for that. They tell me that I have 2 left thumbs and I have no skills, but, I'm catching up.
But then you played Grady in A Nightmare on Elm Street 2 alongside Mark Patton, and Mark reached his Kickstarter goal this week to make the documentary Scream Queen, My Nightmare on Elm Street, which deals with the whole gay subtext in the movie. So what are your thoughts on that and the effect it had on Mark's life?
I've learned more and more about the effects that it's had on Mark's life through being in contact with him, and especially as of late, because he's really, excuse the pun, come out more about it.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how affected he was. I'm very honest in my responses. I let Mark answer how he's been affected by his own lips, and I answer how I saw it and my experience on the movie very, very plainly, which is I knew there was a gay subtext from reading the script.
Right.
I knew there was a gay subtext throughout the whole production of shooting. And everybody that's been claiming that there's been sort of a naivety about it, I don't believe them. And so I'm not here, or I don't appear in the film to call people out, because it's none of my business what other people think. I just know that I spoke to the director on many, many occasions during filming and gave him perfect examples of, like, Jack, why would I pull his pants down in a fight?
Yeah.
Like, brother, I've fought all growing up in the neighborhoods I grew up in. I've been in countless fist fights with other boys, and I've never pulled anybody's pants down in the middle of a fight. So what's really going on here?
Yeah.
There was a lot of other gay subtext to the film as well, but I didn't care. I mean, really? Like, we're making a movie, people. You know what I mean? We're not curing cancer. We're not trying to change, lives. I don't know. Maybe they were. All I knew is we were making a cool horror movie. I was a big fan of the first movie. I loved the character that Robert Englund was playing in Freddy Krueger. I was, super grateful and excited to be in the movie and stoked to play that character that I played. I loved playing Ron Grady. But to say that I was making that movie and I didn't have any idea of a gay subtext would be a lie. But at the same time, listen, folks, I grew up in Hollywood. It's just not that big of a deal to me, and I don't have any judgments about it. So let's move on.
Yeah, I'm really delighted for Mark that he reached his goal, because, like, he really wants to tell his own story. Do you know what I mean?
I think it's fantastic. Like I say, I don't know what it was like to have the experience that Mark had, because only Mark knows. But I did get a feeling from him that he was struggling a little bit with the direction and the writers and some of his character choices. I got that. Yeah. But I never made it any of my business. Sometimes we just utilized it for our character's sake. Whatever he was struggling with was part of what my character was sort of judgmental about him in the beginning of the first act. And if you guys notice that my character arcs where we become not friends, but we come to accept each other in the movie. From making fun of him and fighting with him and putting him down in the beginning to sitting down and having lunch and then actually caring enough for him to come stay with me when he's afraid. And, there's a level of acceptance that my character had that didn't put any parameters on his sexual orientation or what he was going. It didn't matter to Grady. The only thing that mattered to Grady was constantly staying in the moment and being like, yo, man, like, what is your problem? Like, talk to me. And if you don't let me know, then I can't help you. And so that's where Mark struggled, I think, is going to be really important. And that's why I got behind the documentary, and I appeared in the documentary, and I also was a pledger on the Kickstarter campaign, and I'm friends with Mark, very good friends with Mark, and I support him in his endeavor to really bring some knowledge to the public about the struggle that he went through, and hopefully he can be an example to other young men and women who may or may not be going through that struggle, but sometimes just looking for similarities and not differences. It's not only, I think, being gay or lesbian that you can benefit from learning from Mark's experience. Mm-hmm. It's any kind of inner struggle or inner battle or circumstantial battle that somebody has to get through and not back away from or try to get around. The best way to get through something is actually straight through it. And I think that Mark has been really instrumental in helping people to find their own truths. And that's why I really like the idea of his documentary, Scream Queen.
Well then, speaking of Kickstarter campaigns, you're launching your own campaign on Halloween Eve for the movie The Wicked Sick. Could you talk about that project?
Oh, absolutely. I'm so excited about The Wicked Sick.
It looks great.
Yeah, thank you. I wrote this movie. I was at a convention with Robert Englund some time ago, and we were doing a Q&A in front of a rather large audience, and one of the fans had stood up with a question and said, Robert, this is directed towards you. Are we going to see you in any more horror films? And if so, are you ever going to maybe make your own horror film? And the whole place erupted in cheer and whistles, and it really, really inspired me and motivated me. So what I've been doing lately is I've been getting current in the genre again. I've got the movie Tales of Halloween, which is out now, which is a horror genre picture, an anthology of 10 shorts by 10 directors. Super excited. I'm in the opening short entitled Sweet Tooth with Caroline Williams from Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. And then I have another horror film coming out with Dina Meyer and Lance Henriksen entitled The Unwilling, which I have a great role in. Don't want to give too much away, but super spooky, super cool, psych thriller / horror film. And then and I just completed the principal photography. I am very excited about this, folks. I got cast as Fouad Ramses in the remake of the 63 classic Blood Feast by Herschel Gordon Lewis. And I remember watching that movie when I was a young teenager. And it's known as the first splatter film. He's the godfather of gore, Herschel Gordon Lewis is. So 53 years later, here we are, and they called me. My management and agents called me, and I had gotten an offer from a German company that's doing the remake, and I just finished that. We shot in Germany and in France, and again, that was with Caroline Williams, so I was super excited to work with her again. And I play a sick, demented, dark, fanatical psychopath, and even the Germans were shocked at how dark I got with this role.
Oh, I love it.
So which brings me on to my project. You know, I'm jamming in the genre right now, and I had tried a Kickstarter a couple years back. The project was formerly entitled Black Asylum, which was a working title that I never really loved. So many titles are taken these days; it's so hard to get a title that's unique and original. But I had written this film along with Dustin Warburton, and I did a little teaser and a Kickstarter, but I made mistakes and I didn't know what I was doing, to be honest. I've been told by successful crowdfunding filmmakers that I asked for too much money at once and that I didn't do any social media prior to launching my campaign. So I thought, okay, well, you know what? I started getting really busy as an actor again. I'm on Ray Donovan, and I've been doing guest stars in these horror films I've spoken about. And as soon as I came back from Germany, I thought it was a great time to reapproach this project with passion and gusto. So I went out to some actor buddies of mine. I knew that I wanted to do a casting of who's who in horror films. I got so frustrated with financiers and distributors, you guys. They have all these formulas, and none of them are artists. You know, they're a necessity to the business, and I'm not really trying to be negative toward the suits in the business. Yeah. But the point is that, you know, they had all these formulas and foreign sale, and I thought, whatever happened to good actors that are in a good story with great direction, great storyline, great music, you know, great art direction? Whatever happened to just let's make a good movie and let the fans fall in love with it? You know, when Michelangelo painted, he didn't paint what everybody else wanted him to paint or thought was good. He painted what was in his heart, and then everybody fell in love with his work. Whatever happened to that? You have all these prerequisites, it seemed to me, foreign sales and this name and that. I said, you know, I'm doing a horror movie. When's the last time you saw a horror movie that had, you know, this many seasoned actors in it? I don't get it. Like, why do I need to get, you know, Dolph Lundgren to play the lead for you to make money on this movie? I don't understand. So anyways, what I've done is I've gone out to my buddies. I got William Forsythe. I've got William Sanderson, Marshall Bell. I got Cheryl and Fenn so far, John Ortiz, James Duvall, Clifton Collins Jr. I've been putting together this cast list of actors that I've always adored. I've always loved their work. All of them have all been in at least one successful horror franchise film. So I knew the horror fans would know who they are and would like them and love them. But more importantly, I just knew that they were really great actors. So I'm putting this Kickstarter again, like you said. It's launching Halloween Eve. And I'm really, really going to the horror fans. I'm really asking the vast community of horror fans to support horror indie filmmaking and give us a shot at showing you what a good old school 80s throwback style horror movie can do these days. I'm seeing a lot of good horror movies these days, to be honest with you, and I'm seeing a lot of bad horror movies put out there, in my opinion. I see the biggest problem I've seen as of late with horror films is bad performances. And so that's why I really want to put really good actors together so that we can get back to the crux of what entertaining films are, which is it's a combination of everything. It's story and caring about the characters and arcs in the performances and connectivity and continuity, along with, beautiful cinematography and fantastic lighting. So I've also put together a very seasoned crew of behind the scenes friends that I've accumulated over the 32 years of my career, from the director of photography to the first assistant director to the script supervisor, right down to wardrobe. And honestly, even the craft service on the film. I mean, everybody's friends, everybody's people that I've worked with before. And I'm trying to put together this family of good filmmakers to really stamp myself as a director and introduce my production company, Entertainment Playground, and to let people know that we're set to make quality movies. We're not just trying to bang out concepts and gimmicks and do gratuitous kills. What we really want to do is we want to put meaning. I want to, as a director, I want to put my team together and really show what good filmmaking can be in this genre. I mean, I think that it's kind of gotten a little away from the great horror movies that I grew up loving, like The Omen, The Exorcist, Rosemary's Baby. Some of these great films that were not gimmick. They had a first, second, and third act, and the audience went away impacted. And that's what I'm missing from a lot of the movies these days. So I'm asking the horror fans to come on and pledge your support. We have great incentives, and they can find out more right now if they follow me at Robert Rusler, and they go on to our new Facebook page, The Wicked Sick. You can check out hashtag The Wicked Sick and see how we're coming along in our progression. I'm still casting more actors. It's important in this sort of process right now where we're ready for pre-production, and it's going to be important to cast certain actors once we get the budget goal, because some of the actors that I have in mind for day player roles, and I don't want to mention any names, but they're really popular and they're very famous and they're very good, and their agents don't let them attach on to the movie so easily. But I will be able to offer them cameo roles in the film once I get the budget goal. And again, it's a little bit about it is, adhering to the fans and giving them sort of like a who's who of horror movie actors. Sort of like, what's that Stallone movie where he uses all the action heroes?
The Expendables.
Yeah, I want to do like kind of the Expendables for a horror movie. Yeah. I want to put all the who's who guys in it, And I got a lot of actors who are not prepared to be in the film that are supporting me. Of course, Robert Downey Jr.'s got my back, and Josh Brolin, and Sir Anthony Hopkins, and David Arquette. These are guys that are not able to be in the movie either due to availability and or branding. You know, I mean, Iron Man can't be in a horror movie right now. Let's be real about it. He's doing different things, and he's on a different level with where he's going with his career right now. He's not going to, you know, do a $1 million horror movie when he gets paid $1 million to use the bathroom. Got to keep it real. Sometimes people say, hey, man, if you're friends with Robert Downey Jr., why don't you just ask him for the money? My answer is very simple. Well, that's why I'm still friends with him, because I don't ask him for money.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not what he does. He's an actor, you guys. He's not in the business of giving me $1 million to make a movie. That's not what he does, and I don't ask. But what I do ask is that the horror fans, you know, it's not just horror fans. I'm mostly going to horror fans, but, you know, the indie filmmaking community. This is about blood, sweat, and tears, a lot of hard work. This is about dedication and a lot of time invested. And this is, you know, learning from the other side. I've been an actor for a long time, been in a lot of movies. I know a lot about the set and lenses and angles. And I've been directing actors for 5 years at the Hollywood Playground, you know, directing actors in scene study. And, you know, I've really been doing my homework and preparing on my end. The new stuff I've been learning is how the business has changed since when I started acting. The whole business has changed, and I got a little bit frustrated with people that don't know art that try to dictate what artists do, and so that's why I decided to not go. I've been offered from a few different financiers to do this film. But what they're offering is unfair. Let's just keep it that way. And it's not really conducive to years of hard work to just give it all away because I've never directed a full-length feature film before. You know, some of the guys that have been making me offers that I can refuse have, I don't know if they've ever been on a real movie set. And if they have, they certainly haven't been doing it as long as I have. And I've been learning a lot. I've worked with a lot of great directors. I know I've tried to really pick up on what to do and what not to do, and not to be a dictator, but to be a good leader. And I'm really excited about this campaign launch. And I'm really thankful for you for helping me to get the word out so that people understand what I'm doing and where I want to go with my career. Because Entertainment Playground has a slate of films right now, 4 of which I have written out of 10 projects that we have slated for future production. And we would love to have The Wicked Sick become a trilogy and possibly a horror franchise. That's why I'm creating characters like Leonard Gorman, who's my new iconic psychotic. Leonard Gorman will be played by William Forsythe, whom I think is a terrific actor, and his body of work speaks for itself. I just absolutely loved his character in Boardwalk Empire. I've been a fan of his for many years, and I know that he can pull off this character. I don't want to give anything away, but Glenn Hetrick, who's going to be doing our special effects, who does special effects for shows like The Hunger Games and X-Files, you know, another pro. We're going to create this character based on my favorites, you know, in the vein of Freddy and Michael and Jason and Leatherface. We want to keep it unique and be our own. We don't want to copy them, but we want Leonard to be able to join that family of an iconic horror figure. And I think that I have the chops to do it. And I know that Leonard can, William Forsythe playing Leonard can hold up to, you know, my expectations for how I've written this character. And I'm very, very excited that he's on board.
Well, the thing about the horror community is they're very loyal. I'm sure they'll all get behind you. Look at Mark. He got his goal, and I'm quite sure you'll get yours. I'm going to share the teaser trailer on the Crypt Facebook page. And you made that without a budget, so I can only imagine what you can do with one.
Yeah, I spent about, I think I spent about $150 on spaghetti and salad and candy bars for the crew. That's about all I spent on that.
It's really good.
Oh, thank you. I shot that guerrilla style. You know, one of the investors actually asked me once, he said, well, listen, I read the script and I can't really decipher if it's a horror or if it's a psych thriller. And I said, well, to be honest with you, it's a little of both. And
Yeah.
he said, can't have that. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, either I'm going to invest my money in a horror movie or a psych thriller. But I said, I don't understand.
Oh, that doesn't
And he
make an
said, well,
ounce of sense.
And he said, well, if you had to call it one or the other, what would you call it? And I looked at my production partner, Jay Montalvo, who's my partner at Entertainment Playground, and I looked back at the financier and I said, well, I got to be honest with you. It's a horror, psych thriller, dramatic, comedy, action, adventure movie, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And then he went, well, Jesus, show me. I said, yeah, I'd be glad to, write me a check and I'll make the film. He said, no, show me how about a little 2-minute, 3-minute short? I said, okay, yeah, I can do that. I go, how about you give me $5,000 and I'll show you how to do what I mean. He said, no, I'm not going to give you any money. He goes, why don't you just go out and shoot it with your buddies? And I said, shoot it with my buddies. All right, well, you know what? I'll do it. So I got some of my friends together, and we went out and shot this little sort of teaser for tone only, not for story. The characters are not necessarily the same characters in the film. I didn't want to give anything away in this movie.
Just gave the general kind of idea.
Yeah, I saved one of the characters, and the biggest twist in the film I don't mention in the teaser. But what I wanted to do was just show this guy sort of a tonality of what we were doing. And now that it was formerly entitled Black Asylum, by the way. And now the project has become The Wicked Sick, which I'm so passionate about. I'm excited. And I really appreciate you guys' support in my endeavor here to get an A-list cast and an A-list crew together and really begin my journey on the other side of the camera. I believe wholeheartedly in myself that I can become the filmmaker that I've dreamt of becoming, and I have a lot of ideas. Another film that I wrote is called Pray for the Dead, and it's a supernatural spaghetti western. And then I have another movie that I wrote called When We Were Romeos, which is it's my life growing up in underground Hollywood in the 80s. Before I became an actor, I was very involved in the punk and club and skate scene.
Yeah.
And I have a film written about that. It's sort of like maybe a little bit like Kids, Larry Clark's Kids. Mm-hmm. Very, very graphic and real. And I've never seen the 80s depicted the way I lived the 80s, that's for sure. It's always white overbite dance and Dayglow headbands, and that's just not the way it was here growing up in Hollywood. There was a lot of gangs, there was a lot of violence, there was a lot of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and there was a lot of really exciting times, and I really want to show that as a director in my films. So
that sounds really interesting.
Yes, thank you. The Wicked Sick is what we decided to go with first because, as you said, Rita, there's no more loyal fans than horror fans. That you horror fans listening, I want to tell you from the bottom of my heart, thank you for sticking by me. Thank you for being fans. Thank you for coming to the conventions and writing me and asking me for my autograph. All these years, you've been the most loyal fans. And so I happen to also be a horror fan myself since I was a little boy. So being in horror movies has been an absolute thrill for me. And now making horror movies is my next exciting endeavor.
Well, Robert, one thing I have to say to you is I met you at London Comic Con in the summer, and you are just unbelievable with the fans. The heat in that place was unbelievable for 2 days, and everyone that come up to you, all I could see was you smiling. You treated everyone like they were the first guests that came up to you for the day. There were other people there who will remain nameless. You go up to them and it's like you're putting them out, asking them for their autograph. It was like they didn't want you there. Do you know what I mean? It was just like, oh, get on with it. Do you know that kind of way? And every time I went past your table, you were full of smiles and just full of life. And that's why I think everybody should support you, because you genuinely appreciate your fans.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate you saying those kind words. But, the truth is, I just don't forget where I come from. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really important, without the fans, none of us have anything.
Exactly.
If the fans don't go see movies, there's no studios, there's no independent filmmakers, there's no directors, there's no actors. Hell, there's no Kim Kardashians. Don't get me started.
Well, listen, Robert, thank you so much for coming on the show today. And as soon as the Kickstarter campaign is launched, I'll share it all over our horror societies and on the Crypt Facebook page. And I wish you the very best of luck with it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And God bless everybody. And happy Halloween. Don't be scared.
The Crypt interviews in association with Mayo Leisure Point Castle Bar.